now, Sir Ron, are we ready for our discussion?
No.
Okay. According to Doc, I show your face. Okay. Thank you so much. So, our discussion now will focus on conducting assessment remotely. There are two components for our discussion. We have communicating the assessment task to all our interlocutors, or those who are involved in the conduct of the assessment, the parents, teachers, and of course our learners. And the second component of the discussion will be on the record of progress. So these things are very, very essential, especially that we are under the remote learning. So Sir Ron will now be playing the discussion proper, and after mga 20 minutes, we will stop the discussion for us to watch a short video clip on a student's portfolio, and then we will end our discussion. So thank you so much, everyone.
Part 1.
Part 1 voice.
Notebook, your booklet, water, snacks, and of course your patience as we learn together in this. So, there are two things or two components of this session: communicating the assessment task and record of progress. So, in communicating the assessment task, the teacher should ensure that the following details are explained to the parents, to the facilitator.
Okay, we will start from the top.
Our session on conducting assessment remotely under DepEd Order number 31, series of 2020. I am Rhoda, your presenter for this session. How are you today? Type 1 if you are feeling great. How is everyone doing under the pandemic period? So, before we start, prepare your webinar notebook, your ballpen, water, snacks, and of course your patience as we learn together in this session. So, there are two things or two components of this session: communicating the assessment task and record of progress. So, in communicating the assessment task, the teacher should ensure that the following details are explained to the parents, to the facilitators, and to the students. What are the objectives of the assessment task? What are the roles of the learners, parents, and guardians? What are the procedures to be followed and the expected timeline of submission? And what are the standards and the rubrics that they need to follow to get the correct answers to the tasks? The teacher must consult the learners and, when necessary, the parents, guardians, so that to allow room for adjustments, flexibilities if needed. The record of progress, the collection and recording of evidences of learning, is integral for monitoring student learning development. Below are the sample strategies for the purpose of record, self-monitoring tool under the Annex E. So it's very important that the instructions are clear, check-ins, and evidence of learning. So let's now come to the communicating the assessment task. It's very important that in the crafting of assessment tasks in our SLMs, the following principles should be taken into consideration by the teacher. Assessment should be holistic and authentic in capturing the attainment of the MELCs, or the most essential learning competencies. Assessment is integral for understanding student learning and development. A variety of assessment strategies can be employed if necessary with informative assessment taking priority to inform teaching and promote growth and mastery. Assessment and feedback should be a shared responsibility among our teachers, learners, and their families. Assessment and grading should have a positive impact on learning, and our assessment tasks should not stress out, should not burn out, should not burden our learners and parents at home, but it should form part of their holistic development, such as the domains in learning, domains of the learning of a child, which are the following: the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor parts. Okay, so we have now the roles of assessment interlocutors. So what do we mean by interlocutors? These are the people involved in assessment. just like the following: the parents, household partners, guardians, support aides in the community, and we have also our para teachers, learners, our students, and the teachers. So the first part, we have the parents. Their role is on facilitation and feedback, and then diagnostic and development. So for the learners, they are going to track their own progress. So that is on the developmental part. And for the teachers is on the learning outcomes. That is evaluative part. So it's very important that in every assessment task, especially if the assessment task will form part of the portfolio or the summative test, it should be very, very vivid and explicitly explained to our partners at home, to our parents, so that it will really form part of the development of the student. So what are the procedure and expected timelines? So it's very important that we take into consideration, first of all, our learner, who is the heart of our assessment process. So first, the teacher or the entire school should consider the needed evidences. Where can we get that? Based on the feedback of our partners at home. Then brainstorm evidence of understanding using the CPD. So the assessment process in school should really be integrated in the continuing professional development of our teachers so that they can really conduct that during their LAC sessions. What are the assessment tasks and the strategies and so on and so forth. And then plan for a task scenario, complete the performance task blueprint. So this is the part. We have the standard, we have the memorandum, we have DepEd order number 8, number 31 for our standard guides. We have our MELCs as our competency. We have the implied criteria, our agreements, and then we have the task scenario products performances. We can use the grasps so that we can really apply the thematic approach. So all of those should be aligned to each other, those blueprint. So when do we assess? Every after week 4 per month. So in every quarter under the pandemic period, we only have 2 months per quarter. So we started October and then we end our quarter 1 in November. Then we start our quarter 2 on the first day of December. So we really need to plot our timelines in the distribution of the modules, and then when are we going to give the summative test, and then when are we going to get the feedback from the parents, so that every after summative test, we can adjust our assessment tasks. So remember that our summative tests are not limited only to paper and pencil tests. We can have variety of strategies. So for the standards and rubrics, very, very important in giving grades and remarks to the tasks that we give to our students. So our standards, of course, we have our most essential learning competencies, which is our Bible as of this time. And then we're very, very thankful we have the LMS in our division, or the Lughason, our learning. We have our learning management system, yes, the Lughason, and then we have the rubrics. So very, very important that the rubrics should really target what are the standards, what are the criteria that you are looking for, so that you can really get the authentic assessment result based on the activities or the assessment tasks that you are giving. So the kind of focus for the rubrics, now we have to remember, our dear teachers, that the kind of focus should not really burden our students. So what are the components of progress monitoring? So first of all, it's very, very important that we take into consideration instructional change. Why? So we need to ask ourselves these things. Identify what is working through data. So after the SLMs were given, let us really gather the authentic feedback from our parents. So that is why we have the self-monitoring tool. We have the check-ins to be filled up by the teacher based on the monitoring tool given back by the parents. And then we have the portfolio of our learners to give us the authentic evidences of their learning. So this one guides our decisions on instructional changes. So teachers, school heads will really need to brainstorm on some changes under the assessment tasks, because we need to be very flexible and adjustable in our assessment tasks. So we need to ask these questions during remote learning. What is working? Are the SLMs effective? Are the formative tests really provide repetition for mastery? Are the activities enough to be answered, or the activities are too long, or the activities are too tasking and it really burdened our learners? So we need to adjust. What options are available? Not all the learners have the access to the internet. Not all the parents have cell phones, so we cannot text them, but we can only call them maybe, or we can, if we really don't have those gadgets, so we can just write letter or correspondence, and then we address or course that through to our community leaders for them to give to our parents, and then we gather them back so that we can really adjust our assessment tasks in order to fit into the learners that we have, because you haven't seen each other yet. Components of progress monitoring. So it's very important. First of all, the feedback. The assignments given, the assessments given, and the goal progress. So these three things are very, very important when we gather our feedback. So are the assignments given effective? Are the assignments really done by the students? Are the activities there difficult, or are they too easy? So we need to adjust. And then the assessments, the summative tests, the formative tests, are they really applicable to the remote learning? Are the assessments that we are giving to our learners really target our melts? And what is the goal for this quarter? What is your main goal for this quarter? Teacher, you really need to plan out this. You really need to plot your goal per quarter so that you can include that in the portfolio requirement for the pupils or students. Questions to ask during remote learning, additional for feedback. How will you give feedback? So are you going to call your parents? Are you going to text them? Are you going to send email? Are you going to just write a letter to them because they don't have any available gadgets? Or are you going to broadcast over the radio to remind them, to inform them? Progress monitoring during remote learning. So 3 things should be taken into consideration. It should be purposive, there should be focus, and the tools are very, very clear. Of course, we can adjust our tools. If the tools coming from the central office, the monitoring tools, just like in Annex E of the memorandum, if it's stated in Filipino, we might as well translate that in vernacular for our parents to really understand what are the data that we are trying to get from them, what responses we expect. So this is an example of Annex E from DepEd Order number 31. So it's indicated here, accomplishment of the self-monitoring tool is not mandatory, but it is highly recommended to be accomplished to keep track of the academic progress of the learners. So it's in Filipino, so we might as well translate this in Binisaya for our parents really to understand the questions here in the first column. So this one is to be answered by the students, by the learners. And then we have letter B. It should be answered by our parents or guardian or any volunteers at home. So we have the checklist. So it's easier for them to just check, no? And then some feedback below. And then here, for letter C, this one is to be answered by the teacher. So what feedback given by the students and the parents or guardians. So that's it. This form part also, no, of the anecdotal record of the student or per student in your class. So it's very important that assessment and feedback may be given via text message or email or any digital platform. But you can also do home visitation, of course, observing the health protocols or the IATF protocols under this pandemic, because we cannot really see the virus. So we really need to be very, very careful in our transactions with our parents. So in communicating the assessment task, the teacher must consult the learners and when necessary, the parents or the guardians to allow room for adjustment, flexibilities of certain tasks. So teachers should set realistic expectation and use their professional judgment to find a good balance between what is effective and what is feasible to accomplish remotely. So if you're copying assessment tasks from books, be sure to modify the directions suitable to remote learning. Progress monitoring data collection options. So here are options. Assess students during the regular remote instructional times. Language experience approach may ask parents, no, you just let them write their comments, their suggestions for you teacher to really track the progress of your students, or the students, those older students can just write the reflection per assessment task. And then assign students to meet with paraprofessionals using distance instruction. So be careful with this, with the health protocols. Teach students to self-monitor their progress on the activities you assign. Of course, we have the rubrics for them to really check their work based on the criteria, and the criteria should be very specific and easy to understand also. And then the self-learning modules should really contain the answer keys so that our learners can really track their progress. Documentation during remote learning. This is very important, of course. Assessment performance. It forms part of, this one is their portfolio. You can track their performance through their portfolio. Report progress to parents, call them, write them letter, correspondence, or text them. You have your group chat. Your goal or your objective of implementation. So it should be in your LCP of the school head, of course, of the entire school. And then remote or online or virtual classrooms if they have the accessibility to the internet or gadgets at home. But if none, then you might as well devise other strategies which would really be applicable in the context of the community, of the parents in that certain school, so that we can really document the assessment tasks, the performance of the students, and the progress of the students should really be reported to the parents. So this one is very important, these three processes: procedure, training, support. So we really need to clarify the procedure to the parents. And then if there is a need to train the parents on how to conduct this type of assessment, example in reading, then we really have to do that. Of course, asking permission from the community if they allow that, if they're going to allow, but observing proper physical distancing and health protocols. Progress monitoring best practices. These are all suggestive. Scheduling and collaborative planning in school, this should be done by the teachers and the school head. Develop processes and training, and then develop data collection system so that all your the feedback will really be gathered properly and then be recorded so that instructional changes can be done. And then you have to establish family communication. Of course, the communication line should be very clear. It should be very open with our parents and our facilitators of learning at home, so that the school and the homes and the community will have a harmonious relationship as to the unity in the development of the learning of our students in that certain school. So it's very important that they form part of the assessment process. Another thing, we have provide teachers with template and frequency expectations. So it should be very clear with our teacher and the school head. Provide teachers access to the documents online or offline or hard copy. Ensure the availability of the materials or the learning resources to our students, the monitoring tools to our parents and para-teachers, and prepare contingency plans for instructional change if necessary, especially on the assessment part, because it's very important to really give the proper assessment and feedbacking to our parents so that we can really monitor the progress of our students even under the remote learning. So it's very clear that the assessment tasks should be communicated properly to our parents, to our guardians, and facilitators of learning at home. And the monitoring tool should also be very, very clear. So this one is an example of family check-in. So this is under the record of progress. So this one, each student should have a form for this, and this should be filled up by the teacher. So the name of the student there, and then the teacher involved or teachers involved, and then the date, revisit family support plan, what are the successes and what are the challenges, discuss goals from previous week, successes and the challenges, identify student goals for upcoming week. So for goal number 1, 2, and then activity 1, activity 2, teacher should fill that up. Adjust number of goals and activities as needed. Family support for upcoming week, area of need, resources, strategies, or actions to be taken. So this one will be filled up by the teacher or teachers based on the feedback given by the parents or guardians. It could be a monitoring tool or through calls. Resources available to families during remote learning. This is very, very important. Who is responsible for ensuring families get what they need? Are the community leaders involved? Did the school conduct the proper protocol? And this is the distribution. How will the family get the resources that they need in an efficient and safe way?